All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Tennis Channel Inside In on the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. We've got Abigail Johnson back in studio, back in the United States. Welcome back, Abigail. Last time you podcasted, really good numbers, really good reviews. So we had to have you back just from a business side.
Oh, no pressure, right? No pressure. But it's great to be back. I think it was February last time I was here. Gorgeous weather here in LA. It has been blue skies every single day since I arrived, and I've been here for about a week and a half now, so zero complaints from me. And on a side note, the tennis has been very good as well, which is always great.
Yeah, it's interesting because we have a deep Rolodex of announcers, which helps me out having just great guests on the show. You, the announcing crew, come in and you're knee deep in it. So you go right down, head down to work, and you just immerse yourself in tennis, which I know you love because you love the sport so much. But it kind of gives perspective, I think, that, you know, players go event to event. You come over from England to the United States and it's back to work. The grind really doesn't stop. So it's great to just still catch yourself immersed in the life of a tennis announcer.
Oh, for sure. I've never been more immersed in it in terms of the job side of things as right now. This is my 10th week straight of commentary, which you tend to avoid doing that many weeks in a row because it is quite taxing mentally because of the focus that's required. Some of the days are really long. I did a few challenges between Roland Garros and Wimbledon, so that's solo days, 4 or 5 matches. I've gone clay to grass to clay to hard courts, so that kind of emphasizes what a long stint it's been. It will have been May to August, so I'm ready for a breather to kind of refresh the mind, the body, and everything, the voice as well, actually. But I've been just trying to pace myself nicely the last couple of weeks, so I'm giving my best when I'm actually on the mic and just reading things as sharply as I can. Yeah,
some people actually say announcing tennis is harder than playing. I'm kidding, obviously. But
that is funny though. When on the few occasions when if I work like a challenger or an ITF and get some of the current players on the mic with me, they always comment, wow, it's harder than it looks. Like, how do you find enough things to say? How do you stay focused for this length of time? So I think it is very insightful to actually get behind the mic yourself and see. Yeah, it's not always as easy as it looks, really.
No, it's not. And you're going surface to surface, level to level. I mean, there's challengers in there, but also calling matches at the All England Club. I'm sure that had to be not just a bucket list for you because you've got this experience now, but a very special feeling as a native from the UK to be able to call matches at tennis's most hallowed ground.
Oh, I loved Wimbledon this year. And Wimbledon is always special, but just some of the storylines as well that were coming through and players that I've watched from a very starting out level come through and get their big moments on the big stage, mixed in with the ongoing storylines at the top of the game. You know, Carlos Alcaraz doing the back-to-back with Roland Garros and Wimbledon, and that strength at the top. The women's field really opened up, where particularly when Sabalenka pulled out, it was kind of all to play for. To see Krejcikova come through and get that second major title on a singles court, how she warmed into the grass. It was there was no shortage of storylines to keep track of, and it was a really, really enjoyable tournament.
It's funny you say that because, just as an aside and a disclaimer to people listening to this podcast and in general, my strategy has always been for the first week of a major to try to give as much credit and time to the players that probably aren't going to be going the distance, because there's just so many storylines each match and each tournament. And it really does, I feel, unfortunately, because there's not enough time for us to talk and comment, some of the stuff gets lost by the wayside, where someone like your friend in Kartal, who you knew, and I saw the Instagram post to prove it when she was on the way up, but wins a couple matches, goes out, no shame to one of the best players in the world in Coco Gauff. But that's a storyline, someone that people didn't know, having her moment and having a career-changing moment on the grandest stage. And I think it's cool that you have the perspective of not just knowing her, but knowing what it takes for these players to even get the opportunity to play there.
Yeah, I think it's cool that everyone's got to see her properly for the first time as well. Yeah, I mean, I had that on multiple fronts, actually, with Henry Patton winning the doubles, and he actually played an event in the UK, domestic event that started during lockdown called the UK Pro League, and himself, Sonny Kartal, a lot of players use that to Henry was pretty soon off the back of college, so that was almost like a career starter on the pros. And for Kartal, it so much was as well, because she had been a promising junior, but she was sidetracked a little bit by injury. Yeah. So making that transition to the pro game was a little slower for her. But oh my goodness, it's been coming for so long for Sonny. And to see that come into place for her when it did was amazing, because she's had a really tumultuous past season with injuries, with illness, that we won't go into the full extent of, but it's been stop, start. And I actually said to the girl she beat first round in Wimbledon qualifying, Suzanne Lemens, she's actually in really good form herself. I said, to be honest, if she'd been fitter, she'd have been main draw this year. That was a very tough first round. And I'm not saying that would be on her own ranking, but definitely would have merited her a wild card. As it is, I think the way she actually did it this time around, coming through qualifying, proving herself, earning the right to be in that main draw, coming through some quality players to do so. She beat Mirra Andreeva, who's top 100. And grass doesn't naturally play into Sone's skill set. She plays with a very heavy forehand. She's much more comfortable. And I say it with a laugh because Brits, but on a clay court, she was picking up her first ITF titles on that surface, but whatever the surface, she's come back with a bang every time she's resumed action this year. And I mean, such a big win over a seed, first round of main draw, and so special to see her walk out on court one against the world number 2, and played a very competitive first set with Coco Gauff. She was down a break, she broke her back. I think the roar that Gauff let out when she capped that set off at 6-4 showed just how under pressure she had been throughout that situation with up against the home player as well. Gauff's pretty used to being the crowd favorite, so that was a different kind of scenario for her. From there, really showed her level with just not giving an inch. There was a bit of a dip for Sone beginning of the second set, and then, Coco came through, but I actually did a little interview with Sone for the BBC, who I was working for directly afterwards, and big smile on her face. She comes into the room, and the first thing she said was, "Boy, that was fun." Win.
Oh, that's good,
That is a win for her to be able to go out onto court one debut, playing a top 10 player for the first time, having had the misfortune previous year of drawing Madison Keys in the first round. Horrible stylistic matchup for her in what was a good opportunity with her current form. I know I'm rambling again here, but it was a very special time, and I'm very certain that you're going to see more of her. She's going to keep building. She's got an incredible attitude, very good long-term team around her, which is a little more of a rarity in the women's game. I feel like there's a lot more chopping and changing there. So there's potential there. There's real potential there.
I'm happy to see it. I was just going to ask you one other thing because you brought him up. Do you ever play chess with Henry?
No, I feel like I'm the only person in British tennis circles that doesn't play chess.
So that's the thing, though. So that's the thing. Like, it's a very popular game for everybody.
Right, it is across the board. I think if you're stepping into tennis circles, there's a lot of chess and there's a lot of golf. They like to do that in their downtime. I don't know if it's something to do with the hand-eye coordination, but these are two kind of relaxing activities that actually can do you some benefit on the court as well.
Well, it was a great Wimbledon. As we go into that post-Wimbledon transition, we know there's tennis on all surfaces, clay, obviously with the Olympics, hard court started. Talking about the clay, and we talked about him last week on this show, but he won again, Matteo Berrettini. And I actually did give you credit last week with the stat that he has turned around the tiebreak issue since losing the center, but not as much drama this time. This is somebody, I know the field hasn't been the best. He's not really pushing himself against the very best, but he's just winning right now, Abigail. And what Matteo Berrettini does more than anything is look like he's in top fitness shape. So I would say, as I said last week, this is kind of a table-setting year for him. What have you seen from Berrettini that might give you inklings that this could be a guy who gets his way back up to the top of the rankings again?
Oh, mastering those big moments is huge. I mean, the official stat right now where we're sat is 9 out of 9 tiebreaks won since he lost all 3 that he played against Jannik Sinner. I called a couple of his matches in, it was Kitzbühel that he won last week. It was Kitzbühel, yeah. Off the back of Gstaad. I missed a lot of Gstaad because I was commentating Borstad. But just oozing confidence at the moment, Berrettini. And I think that builds. It's a very easy thing to just say, it's a confidence sport, playing with confidence. But where does that start? I think with all the injury setbacks, multiple different ones, hand, back, ankle, over the past year and a half, to be able to, and I mentioned this with Sonny Kartal, come back pretty much directly off the back of injury and have an impact. He did it at the Phoenix Challenger this year. He then did it again when he won his earlier title on clay in April. And I think going up against Jannik Sinner, who is easily one of the best players of this season, yeah, he lost 3 tie breaks, but he won comprehensively the only set that wasn't a tie break.
And we were saying coming out of that Berrettini was probably a top 10 player in the field at Wimbledon. He just got that brutal draw.
Yeah, and you can lean into history there as well. He's played so well in recent years on the grass courts. 2022 Queens and Wimbledon. It's 2021. Yeah. But I mean, he had to pull out with COVID, didn't he? And then there was that spiral. But I think things have fallen into place nicely for him to grow that confidence, because you've got to build it up. So he had that. Okay, so I've outplayed Jannik Sinner in a set. Brought a good level to that. Then he moves on to the clay and altitude conditions, and he's getting a lot of movement and jump out of the serve that's already a weapon, can play onto his forehand side. And then the matchups, his first tie breaks against Pedro Cachin, good matchup for him. And then I think the first top players that he really went up against in the tiebreak format were Felix Auger-Aliassime and Stefanos Tsitsipas. Yeah. Well, they are 2 top players on rocky roads of late. So if you're going to catch them out, it's going to be in that tighter scoring format. Right. And so I think once you've got those handful of tiebreaks under your belt, you're just growing and growing from there. He mastered some tight moments on the scoreboard with class, composure, good clarity of thought and strategy. And just has really been growing into his game. It's tough to read long-term in terms of how he's consistently going to match up against that top 10, because he's not been playing them. Yeah. But there's a lot of positives from having that confidence that he has weapons that mean that he can play his way into matches and into tournaments. He's never getting blown away. For sure. So he's heading right back up there, I think.
They call it the altitude double. I guess I read that. So Gstaad and Kitzbühel. But no, it was good to see him moving well and enjoying tennis as part of the game too. Also want to point out, because these players are, one's still in the Olympics, one's out, but that Umag final between Musetti and Cerundolo, that was a banger. It's like, now it's convinced me that I'm in now whenever these 2 play. But 2 guys that were going to the Olympics literally the moment after played a 3-set thriller with Cerundolo winning on the clay in a match where I didn't think Musetti played that bad at all. He did serve for the match and got broke, but these are 2 elite players on clay especially, but Abigail, on any surface, these players with what they can do seem like they can be a factor in the men's game for a while.
Oh, for sure. Cerundolo is more transferable than he's given credit for, I think. I mean, he won that title on grass course last season. Did he win Eastbourne? So he's got a big forehand, and that's gonna play well on every surface. I think I was impressed, and you kind of alluded to it there, the strength of the fields, the level of the tennis in that week prior to the Olympics, because a lot of times in the week ahead of slams, you see these withdrawals and maybe the level can be a little bit iffy, right. But, there are top players out there putting in high-level performances. Musetti's turning a corner. With Cerundolo, I mean, he does still love the clay, because I feel like he can use his backhand a little more in those conditions, because he's not as often put under pressure on that side. There's a massive difference for him when he's hitting his backhand up on top of the court and then when he's forced to play a meter or so back. For sure, yeah. So I think the potential weakness in that side is disguised a little bit more when he's on a clay court. So never surprised to see him doing well, but it's always a massive boost for him to take down a player like Musetti, but also he took out the top 2 seeds. He got the win over Andrei Rublev as well. So for him, really, really good week to build on.
Might be a time to catch Andrei Rublev, just how he's been, I'll put it that way. I just wanted to say for Musetti, though, this is when I've started to see it, the inklings of this is a top 10 guy. This is somebody that, and it's not a guarantee. We know how this sport works, but has all the tools, loses that Wimbledon semi to Djokovic, doesn't go his way, but gets right back to it. I'm starting to see the hype a little more than maybe I have in the past.
Oh, right with you. Yeah. Around about this time last year, even, I was kind of wondering, is there a ceiling there? And there might still be. I mean, he's had an incredible season of 2 halves. He was kind of nowhere at the beginning of 2024 and then suddenly gets back on the clay, and he played Djokovic brilliantly at Roland Garros. He effectively finished Djokovic's tournament, because even though he didn't get the win there,
he wounded him.
He wore him down to the point of no return. That's my one question mark really with Lorenzo Musetti moving forwards is his style of tennis too taxing to really go all the way at the big events. I don't think he's quite getting enough on the return, out of those return points consistently. Give him a bit of slack because he was transferring back onto clay in the week I just called last week, but letting a lot of second serve points go without actually putting the return in play and asking the question. But it's less that, though. That's very much fixable, and more his brand of tennis is to frustrate you and to take away your rhythm, and he's such a skillful player. There are occasions where every single ball comes back differently: slice, spin, shape, trajectory. It's enthralling to watch, but it takes such mental and physical energy to actually sustain that across the length of a match without hiccup. And there's always going to be a moment where you dip, and that's where the top players catch you out. So yeah, does he have that one big shot that's going to help him out in those best of 5 set formats, in those bigger tournaments where there's more on the line and more pressure on your shoulders? Really impressed by how he's turning things around this year, and time will tell. But that's the big question mark with him, I think.
It's been exciting, and putting his head down and just playing, maybe that's good. He's hadn't had time to think about the pressure of the Olympics, just shows up and wins a couple matches. Before we move on to the Olympics and, of course, the Citi Open, just want to also mention the other title winners last week. Mirra Andreeva gets her first title at age 17. Magdalena wins and beats Fretch, and then they both get a ride with a billionaire's jet so they can make the Olympics. And then Nishioka wins in Atlanta. Unpredictable final there, but he gets the job done, beats Thompson in the finals. So thoughts on any of those finals, on any of those champions, maybe some unconventional champions for a few of them?
Yeah, true. I love that for Mirra Andreeva because she is a real star on the rise. And for me, she's taking almost a Coco Gauff trajectory here in terms of she's climbing every rung of the ladder. She's 17. That was her first tournament at WTA level as a top seed, so very much under the spotlight. Maybe made a Grand Slam semifinal a little prematurely. She did have Sabalenka, who was a bit under the weather when they faced off, and she's still in a position, Andreeva, where if she's got a quality firepower opponent, she can get blown off the court. But what she's doing incredibly well is handling the matches that you would expect her to. She's incredibly intelligent, brilliant tennis IQ, and she's got that real weapon of the backhand down the line. She's got depth to her game. To see her step out there as a top seed for the first time and handle everything in front of her, impressive and promising. So that was a really good one to see, I think, her coming through with the win.
I like how she thanked herself in her victory speech. That was pretty good. She's funny. I mean, that's the other thing. Some of these tennis players are funnier than you think.
Right, and that's why when I say star, I mean, when you're talking about a star as opposed to a great player, that's someone that's bringing the full package. You know, are you appealing on a media front? Do you know how to present yourself?
Right.
And she's had that nailed down from a very young age. And I think Gauff was the same in terms of how she presented herself and how she came across to people. So I'm seeing a few similarities there, I think, because the two of them, it's easy to forget with the top player Gauff is now, but she took a while to build up and actually start getting those wins over the top players. For a while, it was just her consistency keeping her in the mix and buying her more exposure to that level before she really took that step up. So Andreeva seems to be on that path.
Certainly does. As we move along here on Tennis Channel Inside In with Abigail Johnson, talking all the tennis storylines as the calendar switches. We got the Olympics, we got the Citi Open in Washington, D.C. And speaking of that latter event, the hard court swing, the North American hard court swing unofficially kicking off with this. A pretty good field considering the Olympics are going on. On the women's side, and we can kind of start there, Sabalenka came in as the prohibitive favorite. We'll see what her form looks like. You get it on paper, right? Because all things equal, her at her best should be viewed as such. But that's the question. What form is she going to be in? She is a slow starter to her Grand Slam campaigns. So there's still some questions about what version, Abigail, of Sabalenka we're going to see.
Absolutely, because she did have to skip Wimbledon, didn't she, with injury as well. So that's an additional question mark. I'm in your boat right now in that unless it's Iga Swiatek on a clay court, I'm picking Sabalenka everywhere unless she gives me reason not to.
So like her floor is probably the highest, like in terms of like...
absolutely. Yeah. And it's transferability. I think she's the most transferable player on the WTA scene since Serena Williams and Ash Barty in terms of just being able to adapt to whatever conditions she is placed in and also having that head for the big occasions too. So, I mean, she's the standout name there. I mean, Washington, D.C., it is the first all-hardcourt week on tour in the lead-up to the U.S. Open, and it's been incredibly popular in previous years. It's still a strong draw this year, but when you consider that I think the world number 11 was the 5th seed on the women's side last year. And now it is very much like it is more open than that this time around, as you'd expect with the Olympics. So I think there is very much a spotlight on Sabalenka. So how she handles that off the back of very little prep, that's a storyline.
It is funny, though, by the way, now that you mentioned that. Like, Kazakhina's the 2 seed, but we were looking at the odds pre-tournament. She's not in the top 6. So they're viewing actually Emma Raducanu was in that 2nd spot, so they're bullish on her. There is a dip past Sabalenka, but it's muddled with names like Raducanu, Ons Jabeur, who we'll see, Paula Badosa, Azarenka, Samsonova. So there is a great tier of players. Sabalenka, clearly, as you said, has done it, has just performed at this level. But there's a nice group of ladies that, if they break through here, could vault themselves up into the U.S. Open contender list.
Oh, definitely. And I think it's also interesting with a number of the commentaries I've done over the past few days. A lot of the players here haven't done a ton at this tournament in the past. It's like first round exit, second round, not many beyond quarters. So the confidence that would come from getting a run at a tournament they're not so familiar with. And maybe that plays into why Kasatkina is a little bit down the list in terms of potential to win the event. She's not had a great result here before. I don't think she's been beyond the second round. So that definitely plays into stats and projection and all of that kind of thing. But yeah, I think the US Open of all the slams in recent years has been the slam where you can take a little bit more out of what's happening in the lead up to suggest who might do what at the actual tournament. Sometimes the lead up events can be a bit of a red herring and the eventual champion bolts from the blue a little bit. I guess that kind of happened with Krejcikova at Wimbledon. Yeah. But I remember Andreescu having a strong lead up when she won the US Open. Sloane Stephens, when she did it, had the same. So
I think the men aren't really playing the event as much. Like, you've seen less, Djokovic hasn't played both, even Rafa. Alcaraz and Sinner are kind of taking that forward-thinking approach at a much younger age.
Sure.
I think, so...
Different story on the men's side. But for the women, I think you can actually take a little bit from what is happening in those few weeks leading up to the main event.
Could be Raducanu, who's done this before, won the U.S. Open, that maybe that's the bump there. Samsonova is a big hitter, so it doesn't surprise me that they view her as such there. And, Azarenka is just that wily veteran that if all things are equal, it's like the one person that's handled Ostapenko this year has been Azarenka. She just deals with her tricks. So. And
Samsonova's won before. Yeah. I think she won in 2022. Yeah. So she's probably the only former champion in the mix. Yeah. Don't have an official stat on that, so you can edit that out.
So we're wrong. I'm wrong all the time here. So we have also the doubles thing, and this is a good segue. You're seeing it obviously at the Olympics, but even in these tournaments now, I feel like we're seeing more friendship doubles pairings and cool ones. And I brought that up because Jabeur and Badosa are playing as a team. So it's good to see it being enjoyable. It's also good, or is it, to talk about the mic'd up thing with doubles right now? Because I know you have some thoughts. I have some thoughts, but doubles mic'd up, not for all teams, not for all players, but we saw it for one team in particular, that there is a scenario where they can mic you up and it goes right to their fans, right to the TV broadcast basically right away. Ben Shelton opted out of it, said I value my career too much. But thoughts on mic'd up live doubles?
Yeah, I ended up calling that match of all the matches. It was Harry Heliovara, one half of the Wimbledon winning team, who was the first doubles player to be mic'd up. And he's a very chatty, flamboyant presence on the court. So I think he loved that. Yeah. I don't know if he played into it a little bit, but the guys know that this is a way to promote their products. Henry did say that he wanted to be mic'd up as well. I think that might happen in the future. I get it from the perspective that, in contrast to singles, a lot of doubles matches are broadcast without commentary. So it's that bit of insight that hopefully you would be getting from the commentary if that was present. The players are kind of providing the commentary themselves somewhat. I do see some potential issues. Actually, Harry did a post on Instagram of that match, and there was another doubles player, I can't remember who, but commented, what if the coaches of the other team have like earphones in, listening to the output.
I didn't even think about that.
And then they're actually hearing what's going on the other side. And with the coaching that's allowed nowadays, they can actually alter tactical process in line with what is being said at the other end of the court, because obviously the opponents can't hear, but everyone listening to the stream can hear. So, I mean, it's very early stages. They are trialing a lot of things with doubles at the moment, and I like that they want to heighten the profile of doubles. I think there's potential in this because of the way doubles is generally broadcast, but I still am not sure they're going about it the right way in terms of, I mean, start from the ground up, put doubles in more places, promote it more, make it more watchable on streams. It's not always easy to watch the doubles game.
And I do think that any idea to kind of make it more fun and spice it up and try things is good, even if it's trial and error, not everything sticks. The thought about coaching is a great point. Didn't think of that before. It could be an advantage. I would be more worried about, players can get heated, things can be said if it's live, especially with kids broadcasting. That is a concern, because other sports do the mic'd up thing, especially in America, but it's a delay. It's not live right away. You're able to filter some stuff out. I think doubles belongs in tennis. It's not a hot take. I think when Mark Knowles was on this show, and he's an ATP board member, he talked about how the second week, if we're going to have these expanded weeks for Masters, that doubles, he talked me into it. That doubles second week is good because you'll get singles players that'll stick around. You'll get more practice court time. I think I'm encouraged, Abigail, that they're trying stuff, even if this isn't my favorite idea, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm with you on that point, that there is the interest to scale it up as a product. But yeah, I think time will tell on a number of things, actually, how that works. And in everything, I just want the players' voices to be heard. I think so often that can be kind of bottom of the pile in terms of how they respond to things that are being trialed and their feelings on it moving forwards. Like, this is their livelihood in their careers at the end of the day, so those voices need to be listened to, not just on the mic on the court. But I mean, I hear Ben Shelton, your first thought when you're on court is not the words coming out of your mouth. So who knows what may be caught in that situation. Entertaining for the viewers potentially, but maybe not so much for the players in the aftermath. But interesting though, I'm not as familiar with the American sports. So how do you feel that works across the board in terms of miking
So
up the
they
players?
don't ever air it live to fans or audiences.
Right.
So you'll have a lot of players mic'd up, and there will be a filter through. And it's not just for posts like day after. They will splice it into the broadcast, but you have engineers working on it to obviously make sure something unseemly doesn't come out.
Okay.
It's and I also don't know if there's a demand to hear a full mic'd up version of everything. They do that for some in baseball. They have mic'd up outfielders, but I think it's for a portion of the game and not the entire game, because that could be a little distracting when the ball's in play. But either way, I think it's worth considering. I did want to get back to the men's draw though, because it is as wide open as a men's tournament can get, with the slight favorite heading into today, Andrei Rublev. I think he's in action now, but Rublev's slight favorite, but it's very, very distant from what you'd see from a traditional favorite. You have Tiafoe and Shelton in the mix there, Khachanov, Korda looking for a title. There's a list of contenders. There's some surprises, but how would you assess the field right now of who's in the men's draw? And if there's a player that you think could be sitting pretty to round into form and take this one?
I need the draw up. I might drag the draw up actually for this, but it is for a 500 as the big hardcore event first up leading into the US Open. So open. Rublev's not convincing me at all.
No.
I'm concerned for him.
Tiafoe's the hometown guy, so it's like, and he had the tough match early, which in a weird way might be good. I look at him as just getting through those early matches, not feeling the pressure early. He's somebody that wants to win here more than probably anyone in this field. Shelton is the other trendy name, but he loses early to Shang last week, and we're still waiting for him to put it together.
That, again, just underlines how open it is, how much potential there is. I was watching a bit this morning of Giovanni Pesci-Pericard, the young Frenchman who has blasted onto the scene this year. By the way, I was watching him at a Challenger 75 in the UK in February, and now he's an ATP champion. Made fourth round, I believe, of Wimbledon as a lucky loser. Big weapons, huge weapons, my goodness, with the serve, and that one-handed backhand is not so targetable because of his height, because of how big his key weapons are. So he's very much in the mix. I think, you've got those players in Ben Shelton and Sebi Korda, where this could be a corner turning week for them because they have not had confidence and they've not had like their best form of late.
Paul and Fritz have kind of separated themselves. I think it's fair to say. So that next three right now, and Shelton I know is there in the ranking, but he wants a big result. He has points to defend coming up. Tiafoe's kind of dipped a little bit with his record. Working with David Witt now is interesting too. So I wanted to get your thought on that because Witt I like him as a coach. He's worked, but predominantly with women. How is this going to work, and how is Tiafoe going to be responsive to working with another new coach?
I think it's going to be a very different perspective with the presence Witt has had in the women's game. It's pretty cool that he's been very much in on an American scene, though. Venus Williams and Jessica Pegula, the most prominent names that he has worked with. And with Tiafoe, like he wants to stay interested and stay engaged, and maybe a new voice is what does that. I know he's had multiple voices recently. I think he only split with Wayne Ferreira in the off season, and then was it Diego Moyano he had since in just the past few months. But Tiafoe is always a player that responds to energy, and he wants to give off that excitement, and American hardcourts are the place for that. He's had a semi-final run at the US Open for a reason. Ben Shelton's the same. Last year. Is it a little different not having had the confidence this year and knowing he's got points to defend? Maybe, but I think a number of these guys are competitors where just playing at home has the potential to bring the best out of them, and Tiafoe is definitely a player we've seen that with in the past.
Well, I'm excited to see how it shakes out, because if Tiafoe, Shelton, or even Sebi Korda, who's been inching close but looking for that result, if they get this title, could be a Parrot card breakthrough. Fakina's in this draw. There's a lot of different names. So who wins, who has confidence, who takes that into Canada and then Cincinnati and then the US Open is going to be big. Well, before I let you go, some Olympic updates. So I did a podcast with the other guest on this show last night. We're going to update everybody with the Wednesday results too as we record this. There's a lot of chalk on the men's side, so not really as many upsets there. Fritz did lose to Musetti, but it's setting up for a good quarterfinal round there. Felix beats Medvedev, but some might not call that an upset. On the women's side, Iga in 3 with Collins retiring. We've also got Schmiedlova into the semifinals, beating Krejcikova. One match still to go in Vekic and Kostuk. But how about Qinwen Zhang? Spicy Qinwen Zhang getting into the semifinals.
Yeah, she's made herself front and center, although maybe other players have done that for her as well. But she was so cool against Angelique Kerber today. I just saw the end of the tiebreak, and Kerber saved 3 successive match points. Zhang's response, step out, drop shot winner. And yeah, she's got that ability to shoulder the occasion playing for country. And she had a bit of prep with that, I think, at the Australian Open, and all the talk of her following in Linar's footsteps, and would this be a repeat of history? And she had a very open draw there that she was able to navigate with this pristine, calm air about her that came to the fore in that match against Kerber. Like, I don't think I'd necessarily choose her on a clay court, but it's all about, so much of the Olympics is handling occasion, right? And rising to it. We saw that so much with Monica Puig in Rio in 2016. That meant everything to her, and she played inspired tennis to come through a ridiculous run of players, like all Grand Slam finalists and champions, and actually Kerber herself, who was the form player of the year. It's, so much is occasion. Conditions can play into it. Anna Karolina Schmiedlova, she's an interesting one because she's had some of her best results at Roland Garros. She beat Venus Williams there a couple of times. And just an interesting nugget to throw out there. That's the first time Barbora Krejcikova has won singles matches at Roland Garros since she won the title.
Wow.
She's lost first round every time crazy. Since. So, hey, what form can do for you, right? Off the back of that run to the title at Wimbledon. But yeah, I can see Schmiedlova medaling potentially, just with familiarity with the surroundings.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack. One being Qinwen is aiming to be the first Chinese player to win a medal, and she'll have 2 cracks essentially at that. Props to her. Iga looking dominant again. It's going to be tough to knock her out. It always is on clay. Collins gave her everything until her body literally couldn't handle it anymore. But I wanted to give props to Angelique Kerber. This is a 3-time champion and number 1, a surefire Hall of Famer, and yet how she finished her career is a perfect microcosm of how she played it. She exceeded all expectations. She fought tooth and nail to the end. She overcame any weaknesses, any surface-specific weaknesses she might have, aging, having a child, and still left it all on the line. So props to her for starting her career and finishing it one and the same, just leaving it all out there.
Yeah, I have followed, obviously, Kerber for many, many years. And for a while, I never saw her as more than a solid top 10 player, which is still an incredibly respectable career when you think about how absurdly difficult it is to make it in this sport. The way she punched above and won those 2 Grand Slam titles in 2016 and followed that up. She was such a brilliant player to watch with her ability to turn defense into attack. Her use of the angles from deep in the court was, I've described so many shots as Kerber-esque in time gone by.
Just a squat low down forehand.
She did some special stuff, and she's had a very memorable career that she can be really proud of.
Do you have a men's pick for how you think they're going to go?
Novak Djokovic is eyes on the prize, and I've had serious questions about Djokovic from the offset of this season. I could just sense a little turning of the tide at the back end of last year, lost to Jannik Sinner a couple of times, and then he himself, having played, 3 tournaments at the beginning of this year, was saying, different scenario for me. I've not won a title. We've played 3 tournaments, calm down. But what's happening in his head for him to be thinking and speaking like that? He has been more susceptible to injury and illness this year, and that's part and parcel of growing older, and winning as much as he has takes a toll on your body. But, the Olympics, the one major event he's not won, best of 3 set format, in conditions that he has been successful in. He has won a couple of Roland Garros titles in the era of Rafael Nadal. So I'm keeping a firm eye on him. I don't think I would call him outright to take it, but he knows this is last chance, and he's risen so many times under pressure. Alcaraz is the one to watch. I mean, what he's doing last few months is remarkable, considering that Jannik Sinner was head and shoulders above the rest of the field at the beginning of 2024. And now Alcaraz is here 2 majors of the 3 that have been played, and has found his footing on slower clay courts. So, Nadal-Alcaraz may have exited, but Alcaraz is most likely going to be on that medal podium in the singles.
Yeah, Tommy Paul will be an interesting one. I think Paul's chances on clay might be a little better, but it's tough to beat Alcaraz. In a weird way, Djokovic in the best of 3 format, better chance against Alcaraz, but I'd say Tsitsipas coming up, you never know. And that's the thing, right? This best of 3 format on the men's side in this huge tournament is different. You can't afford to dig yourself or problem solve your way back.
Yeah, so completely. It really makes things interesting. And thank you for flagging that. I had for a moment there forgotten that Alcaraz plays Tommy Paul next. Is that not one of the most interesting head-to-heads of recent times, the success that Tommy Paul has had?
Very much so. Very much so. It's almost like, I think Alcaraz at this point knows he has to be locked in from the beginning. There is a side of it that's Paul is going to land a couple blows early, but then you wonder, and nothing against Tommy Paul, obviously. I'm a huge fan too, but he is going up against somebody that's generationally good. So you have to be locked in early. So I'm excited to see it. And lastly, doubles. Haven't watched as much doubles in recent memory as right now. There's storylines everywhere. We lost Nadal, as you said, Alcaraz. They lost to the Americans. Shout out to them. Rajiv Ram and Austin Krajicek. But that doubles team goes down. The Murray-Evans team somehow, some way still alive. And Paul Fritz is who they'll play next. So some interesting double storylines as well.
Oh, it's electric. I think the doubles ties at the moment are generating the most atmosphere, and that just plays into the fact it is the Olympics, and it is ultimately a team event. So people are getting so into that. It's different vibes, obviously, for the players with what they're competing for. As far as Andy Murray and Dan Evans go, saving match points and career points for Andy Murray in both their matches so far. The Brits, not only are they very, very strong as far as doubles goes at the moment, and even the singles guys getting to train with these doubles specialists, but they do have a history of kind of rising under pressure in doubles draws for the nation. We've seen that many times at the Davis Cup, and Dan Evans even featured in that scenario last year in September at the Davis Cup to get them into the finals. So I think the perfect partner there for Murray to just see what they can get out of this final tournament.
Shout out to Dan Evans. He gave up all of his Washington, D.C. points of the title he won last year.
Correct.
Lost a lot of ranking points to play with Andy Murray, and had a lot of pressure on some of those match points, but we'll see. Well, Abigail Johnson, this was a blast. Thanks for coming on, even though I'm going to be rooting for the Americans in all these Olympic sports. And enjoy Salt and Straw again. You've been a convert.
Yes.
You realize how good it is.
Oh my word. What ice cream. You have great coffee. You have great ice cream. You have great beaches. I have had a phenomenal week and a half out here, and looking forward to a good final couple of days.
For our international audience, just know we converted another non-American to how good America is. So Abigail Johnson, thanks for coming on Tennis Channel Inside In.
Thanks so much. Always a pleasure, Mitch. Thank you.